Hey, look out. It's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
There she is. It's been a while since we've talked to her. We're so glad to hook up with her, Alycia Wood from the Lighten Group. She is an author, speaker, apologist, and hockey player, and so much more. There she is, Alycia.
And voter. Don't forget voter. She's got her sticker on.
Do you see that?
Yes.
I voted for Rick for governor, Dan for Senate. So you guys are on. That's it. New jobs coming up.
We owe it all to you, Alycia.
You really want this state to go down, don't you? Can you imagine? As I just mentioned before we went live, Alycia and a group of other apologists, and they're amazing. And they were doing a podcast, and I was watching it. And I followed. I lost them right after they said their names, I think. But they were talking about some really good stuff. It was deep. It was what God can't do. And what was that? There was a question that was asked, and I didn't really want to get into this that deep, but some question you were asked a long time ago about, did God make a rock, or was a rock stronger? What was that question?
Yeah.
What was that question?
Basically, people ask, well, is it possible for God to make a rock that's too heavy for him to lift?
Yeah.
Or these kind of things, right? Because we think, oh, God can do anything, but he actually can't, because he's actually limited by his nature. So there's certain things he can't do the logically impossible, like make a married bachelor. That's not logically sound, or a square circle. Yeah. So that's kind of what people get at. Is there things God can't do?
Those are probably all the philosophy majors, right? Like that.
Yeah. And also, honestly, a lot of people who are not Christian are trying to figure out, like, just trying to understand the character of God. They're just trying to, some of these concepts are so just different for them. So they're just kind of like, they don't know what to think about it.
Wow.
It's interesting. I don't know if I found this guy or he found me. We were friends back in the 70s. And he started asking me some questions, and he's really big into philosophy. Well, I might need to call Alycia, because a great guy, a huge heart, but he's just asking. He's not even trying to defend his philosophical views. He's just asking questions. So I need to get with you. But do you think that sometimes, now I know that people are hungry and they really want answers, but sometimes do you think the questions are almost like a smokescreen in a sense? It's like, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes it's like, really? Is that a real question?
It's actually really fair, because I think a lot of times it's kind of like you envision like a brick wall. Like there's a brick wall between, and God's on one side and people on the other. And there's a sense in which they can't even like envision the concept of God without knocking down some of these bricks.
Yeah.
And for some people, they've been having these questions for so many years. They just haven't met somebody who's willing to answer them, because, it's religion. You can't talk about religion without offending somebody. And so these questions sit there for 10 years, 20 years. And then they meet an apologist like me, who I'm like, ask me whatever you want. You won't offend me. And they just verbally dump 20 years of questions. Wow. And so for a lot of people, some it is a smoke screen, but some people are like, look, I can't even process this through with anybody to even get to that point. So a lot of my initial conversations, first 45 minutes, an hour, is just people just clearing out their questions, clearing out just all these random things that they have all over the place before we can get to, so here's what Christianity teaches.
But how many of those questions are questions like our brain is trying to understand a God that is really kind of incomprehensible, right? But our finite brains want to be able to understand it, and our brains won't rest until we think we do, right?
Yeah. Yes, because these are hard things. And the reality is for a lot of people who are not Christians, and honestly, even Christians, they really want to be able to engage Christianity with their mind. And if they can't, then they feel like, well, then I'm not really following something that's credible or believable. And somehow it makes me less smart. It makes me not a rational person. And so for both, one thing that we as apologists really try to do is help people, for Christians, what they already believe in their heart, to help it to make sense up here in their minds. But also for the person who's not a Christian to understand, you can actually, I actually believe in this because I think that there's evidence that backs this up. Right. This is not me leaving my mind at the door. This is me bringing it fully into the room. And this is where logic and rationality has landed me, is with Jesus Christ.
Right.
Alycia Wood with us. She's part of the Lighten Group. Check out the podcast, and I know you'll be able to grasp it better than I can. But it is good stuff, and they talk about some amazing topics. There was one, like I said, I didn't listen to it or watch it, but I thought, wow, that's a great question. Now that's probably something that I would ask, is why would a loving God kill the Egyptian babies back when when Moses and the whole deliverance of the Israelites from Egypt? And I thought, wow, that's a question. Sure, I just kind of put that one back in the back burner, and I don't even think about it. But do you have the answer to that? Is that something that you had to dig into, or what would you say?
Yeah. So first of all, that's a really, really good podcast episode. So our podcast is called Where We Begin, and we really expound more on it in like the 25, 30 minutes we have. So I'll give you a really brief kind of synopsis, kind of what I said there. And one thing we have to remember, number one, is that Pharaoh, who is a slave owner, by the way, was given many opportunities to free the slaves, right? The slaves were being oppressed. Their labor was really hard. He was refusing to. God did a bunch of other smaller plagues, and he refused. And so there's a sense in which Pharaoh is also responsible for the fact that he was like, no, I am not going to let them go. And then, but ultimately, oftentimes when we see these stories in the Old Testament, when it comes to children and death, they oftentimes are a foreshadow of something that's to come, of another son, another child who will die, pointing to Jesus in the New Testament. You see this with Abraham and Isaac, where Isaac ultimately isn't sacrificed. And Abraham says, on the mountain of the Lord will be provided. He's pointing to something future. God will provide the lamb for the sacrifice. He's pointing to something future. And then you see even with what happens with Pharaoh and the Egyptian children is, it's like if you have blood over your doorpost, then you're not going to die. It's the firstborn male that is going to die. So you start to see some of these parallels with judgment. It is judgment on people. And so you see these parallels between what's happening there and Jesus. So there's also connections pointing towards the future. And so, yeah, I mean, we don't rejoice over it. We don't need to rejoice over these things. There's no answer that's going to make us rejoice over when a child hurts or something happens. We have to also acknowledge that the evilness of mankind, Pharaoh got to the point where it's like these people were being oppressed for 400 years under slavery, and he refused to let them go. And so God allowed, and you say he brought this angel of death comes through and takes the children so that finally they are freed.
Alycia Wood, and it's lightengroup.org. So what other kind of fun things can you find on lightengroup.org? I mean, you got the podcast. And I say that halfway in jest, but also this is, to me, it's always been interesting stuff. What other kind of things can you find at Light and Group?
Yeah. Well, we have an amazing writing team. And in addition to, obviously people like me who speak at different places and answer people's questions, we have a team that actually you can go there and you can read the articles that we have there, whether it's evidence for the resurrection, whether it's even just something that's helping you process through something you're dealing with, loneliness in your life or other things like that. We've got a whole list of articles that people can read and also listen to. We have a second podcast called Reads from Lighten, and people can actually listen to the article read. It could be a 9-minute article, 14-minute article. And so there are a bunch of different things, topics that are in the articles that I encourage people to engage with, as well, of course, as the speaking and the different podcasts and even questions that we answer and things like that. So Instagram, Facebook, all of those fun things, you'll find Light and Group.
Yeah, some really deep stuff. Also cover social stuff as well, LGBTQ stuff. I also noticed, let me see, Netflix old enough. Oh, no, that's something that Alycia was watching. She was trying to get everybody to watch Old Enough from Netflix.
Guys, have you seen this show? It's amazing. Everybody should watch this show. It's these cute little Japanese, like 2 to 5-year-old kids that go off on errands all by themselves. And it's amazing. Their mom says, I want you to go to this store and buy this store and buy this, and go to grandma's house and get this. And she sends them off on their own, and they go and do it. And there's a camera crew around them and people making sure they're safe. But they just walking down the street. It's so adorable. It's great. You should watch Old Enough.
That's funny.
All right. Well, let's talk about this now. You mentioned that you're speaking, or you have spoken a number of places. So what's coming up for the rest of what you've got? A lot of stuff coming up in the summer.
Yeah, summertime.
Yeah. Yeah. So Summit Ministries, I don't know if people are familiar with Summit Ministries. If you have high school, like I think it's 16 or 14 to 24 years old, young adults, high schoolers, Summit Ministries in Colorado Springs is an amazing organization. And it's basically 2 weeks of like intense theology and apologetics and helping process through a lot of different questions, Islam and abortion and all kind of stuff, cancel culture, these things. So I've got that coming up, and I also have a Rooted conference, which is in Boston, which is a youth conference in Boston, and then I also have Creation Music Festival coming up at the end of June, which is in middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania, but it's a great music festival, 4 days, all kind of bands that people know, speakers that people know, so that'll be really fun, and that's just June.
What's the name of your band? What's the name of your band again?
That's trying.
Yeah, you're singing?
That's smooth.
Do you stage dive? I mean, I want to see this. I mean,
Yeah, there's got to be video. I hope they stream this.
Oh my goodness, no, I will not be stage diving. And the only thing I'll be doing on stage, well, one of the topics I'm doing like 6, I think, or something. But one of the talks is going to be if the internet says God doesn't exist, you say he does. Who's right? And so that'll be, and I'm right before one of the big rock bands. So I'll have all the heavy metal crew there. To listen to this.
Musician, if you need another one, there's a guy named Sean Hart who's
There he is.
Host now. You should get him. Great
There
rapper.
he is.
Let me mention this, that he's so big now. I mean, he was big before, but he's so big now, he won't even return our phone call.
Yeah.
Alycia.
Rick and Dan who? I don't
Rick
know.
and Dan, yeah, it's like, no, it's like a bad dinner or bad lunch. It keeps coming back. No, I don't want any of this.
You know, I texted him yesterday saying, Sean, I'm going to be with Rick and Dan. I said, I'm sure they're going to send their love to you, quote unquote, as much as they always praise you and say, well, good things of you.
He knows we love him.
He misses you guys.
Oh.
Yeah, we miss him as well. No, I was just kidding about not returning the phone calls. But we have been talking about getting back on. We got to run him down. Yeah. I think I sent him a message either right before he moved or right after he showed up. And of course, you know all the process you have to do once you move. You got to unpack and find place and all that. But yeah, we miss him quite a bit. Alycia Wood, part of Lighten Group. If we have time, let's keep her, Dan, for just a little while. If you're up for it, Alycia, let's
sounds good.
Another segment because it's been a while. So we're glad that all that's working together for you. So let's talk a little bit about. Okay, we've got a lot of things going on. Of course, political always, the economy, the possible recession, probably going to be a recession.
More rumors of wars.
What kind of questions are you being asked about the now? I mean, I know you're being always asked about the God thing, but what are you being asked about now as far as maybe social issues or political or things like that?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because there's always something going on in the world. And so a lot of the questions actually don't change too much, except sometimes when major events happen. I remember this is several years ago now, but like, you know, when a certain president or a political leader gets elected or some of that, somebody will say, well, if God exists, why would he let this person win? Or something like that. They'll change to those. Obviously, with a lot of the abortion things that are happening right now in the US, you know, some of those might start coming up again because that one does come up just from time to time, though. And so I think a lot of people are just trying to understand maybe how do you process through some of just the Russia and Ukraine kind of war, and how do you do that? What should you do? People always want to help and they feel helpless. So yeah. I think sometimes the questions kind of become more specific to the day and time. But at the core of it, ultimately people are like, where's God? Does he see us? Does he see what's going on? Is he intervening? Does he hear? Does he care about the people that are hurting? And so it's still a lot of the same fundamental questions. It's just maybe nuanced now a little bit because of the particular things that are going on. And so there is a lot, you know, honestly, one of the big things right now that isn't even happening in politics or in social media world, maybe in social media world, but is the deconstruction kind of thing that's happening within Christianity.
Yeah.
And that so many well-known Christians are deconstructing their faith, which basically means that they are slowly taking apart the puzzle that once was their faith and no longer believing it. And now they're left with, a 1,000-piece puzzle that's not put together.
Right.
And so I think that's actually, big on the people who are trying to understand. This was a influential pastor. This was a music artist. Why are they struggling? Why is this not working for them? And I think that has really shaken a lot of people and made people question maybe where they're at.
That's
so,
interesting.
well, I mean, I think it's a great question. How would you answer that? Because I'm sure it's something you may face when you're doing your events this summer. Is what do you say to that when this person who was in some people's eyes was just a pillar of faith, and then suddenly they don't believe? How do you encourage those kids?
Right.
Yeah. So I would say, number one thing I think we all have to understand is that Christianity is going to ask us to sacrifice. God sacrificed. Okay. Jesus died. He sacrificed himself, and he asked the same of us. So whenever we sacrifice our desires or things that are important to us, we actually are just modeling what Jesus did for us. And oftentimes what is behind people's deconstruction is certain moral issues or certain sacrifices that they have to make for Christianity. And so now they don't always say it, but oftentimes you can see what happens after they deconstruct, and you can see kind of what they end up doing or what kind of they're involved with. And it's helping you to realize, it seems like these were part of what was going on. So one of the things that people need to understand is, yes, Christianity is going to ask for you to make a sacrifice. Are you willing to do that? Are you willing to do that? And that leads to the second thing is, now that you've taken apart your puzzle, Christianity gave you this nice, neatly, we'll say mostly put together puzzle. There are still some questions and holes, but mostly put together puzzle. And now you've taken apart all the pieces. My next question is, what now will you do with the pieces? Because you can't live with the unfinished puzzle. You still have to put it back together. You've taken a puzzle that was mostly put together, taken it apart. Now, what will you put together? What will your new puzzle be? And the reality is that is much harder than people realize. And a lot of people just stay in the broken puzzle state because they can't really fit it back together. They know they didn't like the puzzle of Christianity, but they're not really sure how to make the piece that they have fit anything else that makes sense. And so they just live in kind of a no man's land. I reject the God of Christianity, but I accept the morals of maybe this part of Christianity, or the fact that Christians say life has meaning, or the fact that Christians say humans are valuable. I take those parts, and they pick and choose their pieces. And so my question for the person who's deconstructing is, number one, it's normal to doubt. I mean, it's in the New Testament where we see people doubting and questioning. So it's normal to doubt. That's all deconstruction is doubting and questioning. But understand that when you walk away from Christianity, that doesn't mean that you don't have anything else you don't have to put together another puzzle. You still have the same questions. It's just that your answers aren't going to be from a Christian perspective anymore. They're going to be from a new perspective. What is that new? What are those new answers? What's your new answer to suffering? What's your new answer to how we got here? What's your new answer to morality?
Good.
So I don't want people just to stay in the no man's land of unbroken pieces. Do something now and see if you can fit it together. I guarantee you won't be able to bring a new puzzle together. But either way, that's what I would encourage people to do.
I've never heard it like that, and I've had people ask questions with that, and just basically back away from Christianity, and they do take the icing and leave the cake, or eat the steak and leave the vegetables, just depending on the picture there. But the beauty of it is, okay, so and they never put anything together. There's always those things just spinning around. They never go and look for what is the answer. And like you said, if they did, like the answer to suffering, okay, so if you're going to back off on that, then what, who else has the answer?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And so, but they tend to just stay in that. It's almost like a emotionless life. And the reason why I don't follow God is, and they always bring up, like one guy I used to, what about the kids in Africa? They've never heard about Jesus, blah, 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 blah. there's a psalm that says, if we look in the stars, there, we can see that the Creator has even revealed Himself in the stars, and man should cry out, and
Even
God
the
will
rocks
answer.
cry out. So.
Yeah, and God will answer. So, wow, that's so good. But you're right. That seems to be. We had that conversation this morning in the kitchen, my wife and I, with just family members that have just, things have fallen apart in their lives, maybe with bad decisions, or hey, it must be God. I don't know. But they basically threw out the baby with the bathwater, to use another cliche.
Yep.
And so the thing is that they don't have an answer. I love that. Thank you for doing that. What you do, that's awesome.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that puzzle metaphor, because once you deconstruct it, it's not going to go back together another way. And you said you can take little bits and pieces, so you can have part of the puzzle over here and part of it over here, but it's not all together.
That's a great point. I mean, I'll use that, Dan. I like the way you put that. Yeah, exactly.
Go for it.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Alycia.
I think Dan, we should call. I think I'm going to call Alycia from now on Dr. Alycia Wood.
Dr. Alycia. We'll make her an official doctor.
That's right. And I do that on this program. And how many times has that happened after the fact, Dan? How many times? One time.
One time, yeah. One time. Gary Lane, he became an official, well, not an official, but an honorary doctor. So
yeah. Check out all the podcasts. And if Alycia is in the area speaking, check out that as well. And you can go to lightengroup.org. And I wish we had more time, because I know that you have a bachelor's in criminal justice. I just wanted to see what you're digging into as far as that. Do you still keep that thing burning? Look into stuff like that, like this last trial with the missing teacher. Is that something that sparks your interest, or no?
No, you know what it is, actually. It's actually much more dark than that. That's the part of the problem. I mean, in addition to using, I just think first of all, things make a lot of sense when you put them in terms of a court scene or in terms of a crime scene. And so I think that's a lot how the criminal justice piece plays in. It's like, imagine you walk into a house and this is disheveled and there's blood on the walls and there's this. What can you conclude? And apologists are the investigative branch of Christianity. I mean, we're the criminal justice people of Christianity. But I think also too, this is where it gets darker. But the human behavior, like humans are much more similar than oftentimes we realize. And there's behavioral patterns that you notice between criminals. And honestly, between all humans, it's just that all humans don't act necessarily in the full extent that a criminal does. Right. But a lot of the root things that happen in our past, and a lot of things happen when we devalue people. A lot of people that are criminals will devalue somebody in order to abuse them or hurt them in some way. Yeah. And so, as a Christian, when I'm emphasizing, guys, you could look at the U.S. slave trade, look at Hitler, look at World War II, right? All of these things were devaluing of people, which is the same thing that lines up with criminal behavior. And this is why the value of a human is so important. And Christianity making our value never in the hands of men, but always in the hands of the person who created us is essential for us to actually treat each other well, and to us to love and be not be selfish towards each other and be kind. That value thing is important. And so it's more, it plays into a lot of the human behavioral patterns kind of things that I see. So darker than most people want, which is why I don't talk about it very often.
Look for Alycia Wood's next book, all about criminal minds and CSI and God.
And God.
Dr. Alycia Wood, always a pleasure to have her on the show. Hey, let's catch up with you at the end of summer and see what's going on with you.
Oh, absolutely. Let's do that. I'm sure I have a lot to share about the summer's festivities.
We always love talking to you, Alycia.
Yeah. You too, guys.
Lightengroup.org. There, is it org there, Dan? At lightengroup.org. Check it out, the podcast there. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.